Good morning, and you're very welcome to this episode of Enterprise University. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. And without further ado, let me just share with you what we're going to cover off in today's lesson. And of course, as always, a look back on the previous lesson if you've missed it, and always be aware that all of the recordings are stored on our website in enterpryze.com, in resources, and in the Enterprise University um, subpage. Okay, well, let me just share my screen with you and let's just kick off. You can see there we've got a number of attendees just joining us, so you're very welcome. And of course, as always, if this is your very first time to join us on the journey of Enterprise University, you're very, very welcome. And as I confirmed, you can get access to any of the previous recordings when you need them. So we're already on to Module 7, which is around stock management. And you know from Module 6, we looked at everything stock and how to set up your stock items, all of the different stock item types that are available to define within the system, how stock is maintained and administered within the platform itself, particularly around margins, cost price, so that would be your valuation, perpetual inventory, so lots of different aspects of the system and how to maintain that stock going forward. So just a quick reminder of where we are in terms of the curriculum. So we're on to Module 7 today. You can see that we've had quite the journey so far since October with all of the different modules. And as we head towards the end goal, after this particular module in 2 weeks, we have production. And then we move on to expenses. And then we will look at holistically the whole system overall in terms of making the most of the data that you're inputting into the system on a daily basis. How good is the system without the data that goes in, and how good is the system without the data that comes out of it as well? So reporting, utilizing those grids better, and tips and tricks on it on how to use it better for your own processes. So today's lesson. So what we'll do is we'll just do a quick review of lesson 6. So if you missed it, we'll just do a quick review of what it is that we covered off. Today we will look at the different stock transactions, and really what that encompasses is, other than what we know you can do, of course, around your sales and purchasing transactions, and that is to issue stock and to receive in stock into the system, what else can we do to manage our stock levels? So there's different types of transactions that you can utilize in the system very easily and very simply, but it's important that you understand when to use them, how they're used, the effect on the cost price moving average, which brings us back to what we would have learned as well in lesson 6. So we will look at all those transactions and just ensure that you're familiar with how to use them and when they will impact the system. So as I've said, how they will impact the solution for you. So we'll look at a detailed look at each of those different transaction types. So from goods in, goods out, stock transfer, stock take. So all of those different transactions and how they will impact your day-to-day transactions. We'll also take a quick overview look at picking stock. So really that's all around management of your warehousing, picking stock off the shelf. How can you very easily allocate your stock to a pick list, and then of course send that off then to be picked within the warehouse. So just a quick overview look of what that can look like within the system as well. So obviously I'll do a live demonstration as always, and the key aspects there are on the stock transactions themselves. So we will look at the goods in, the goods out, the stock transfer, 2 different types of stock transfer. One is a very simple transfer that you can do directly on your item screen. Perhaps that's not something you're aware of. And then we'll look at the stock take and why you would use it within the system. We'll also do a stock reports overview, all the different types of stock reports that are available within the system, what they mean, what value they can give you as well. And of course, all the other PDF reports that are available on the stock reports menu. Perhaps you haven't looked at those yet. Maybe there's something in there that would be of value to you, or perhaps they've already given you something customized and that's already been stored in your PDF menu for you. So lots of possibilities there around reporting. So again, another detailed look at each of those reports and obviously ultimately how to use them. We will just do a quick touch on omni-channel selling and really and going mobile, I guess, in relation to stock. And that's just to open up your mind to possibilities of how else you can manage your stock within the system and other channels. So whether that's you're selling online, perhaps that's with Shopify or Square, maybe you have an online POS system or our own online POS, which is Enterprise POS. So however else you're selling your stock, how to manage that within, and of course, utilizing the functionality that's already there, and that's primarily using your warehousing, but how easy it is as well to upload that particular stock to those particular multi-channels, particularly around Shopify and Square. We also obviously have those integrations already within the system and how easy it is to upload the stock to those channels and start selling from there. And ultimately then going mobile, we'll just quickly touch on the mobile app, which is just really the Sell mobile app where you can sell from the mobile app. So whether you're online or offline when you're out on the road, where orders can be raised and stock can be checked to see what's in the warehouse, or perhaps if you've allocated stock to a particular van and you've got somebody going out and selling on the road, or they need to give somebody a replacement item and maybe they have it in the back of the van to check the stock that's in the van or to check the stock that's in other warehouses. So all possibilities around stock items, where they reside, and how you can get an overview of that within the system. So let's just do a quick review of lesson 6 and what it is that we looked at 2 weeks ago. So ultimately, this was your introduction to stock, all the different types of items. And as you gathered, there's a multitude of items from stock items, non-stock items, squared items, three-dimensional items, batch items, serial items, so just to name a few. So quite a lot to take on board. And we'll even have this year, we'll have, for example, we'll have template items coming on board as well. So watch out for that coming in a future release. So lots of things around all the different types of items, but ultimately how they impact within the solution. So whether they increase stock, decrease stock, if there's stock affected or not affected, particularly around non-stock items or service items where they don't affect your stock at all. So we looked at a detailed look at the different types of items and how they generally would be used within the system. More importantly, we looked at the perpetual inventory. So the impact of stock moving within your platform. So the impact of stock moving within the system entirely. So a stock is received in, it's got a cost price. What happens now? The stock is incremented, but also the value of the stock on the balance sheet is also increased. What happens then when you sell that stock? So of course, ultimately there's an effect on both sides. So the stock gets issued out. So looking at the impact of when stock is moved in and out of the system, what happens with the value of that stock? So that's the perpetual inventory, which means that there's constant movement. So every direct impact where there's an item, for example, where there's a transaction that directly impacts your inventory, what actually happens to the value of that stock? What happens to the average cost of that stock? And perpetual inventory means always moving, always changing. So that's where the movement and the value of the stock is always changing. We looked at how to set up the system for the stock. So ultimately overall, the different item groups, what item groups mean in terms of GL account determination as well. So where they would impact on your accounting side, price lists and prices, warehouses, and lots more. And of course, you've got the intercompany aspect as well with your items, being able to replicate those across organizations. We also looked at the different margin calculations that were possible in the system, such as financial margin, such as sales margins, and how that impacts within the system. Bill of materials. So how that works in regards to having a finished product and maintaining all of the raw materials. What do we do? Where does the stock come into play for the actual final product when it's made and received into stock? What happens then to the raw materials? How are they depleted? And of course, all of the relevant production costs and margin costs or margin analysis against those bill of materials. So we discussed lots around that particular area as well. And of course, batch items, so recording items that require perhaps an expiry date, have warranty, that you can record and track those expiry date information or references that are relevant to that batch, and of course report on them as well. So from the time that they are brought into stock, to track and trace the batch item itself. So very important, of course, around items that are perishable, like food and beverage, if you need to track those items as they come into stock, and of course as they're built out perhaps into a final product, and then of course ultimately sold on then to customers, what actually happens in the full process. We did a full demonstration on adding items, and we looked at the BOM item, and we also looked at the batch item. So again, you can catch that particular recording on our website, enterpryze.com. If you click on resources and go into Enterprise University, you'll get access to all the previous recordings. So do check it out if you've missed the last lesson. So let's focus in on today's lesson. So stock transactions. What are the different types of stock transactions that you can do directly? So these are ones that reside directly within your items module. So we start off here with the goods in, which is simply just increasing your physical stock. Quite a common one to use in terms of stock balances, that initial stock balance to bring the stock into or to increase your stock totals. And of course, ultimately, if you had to do an audit or to update or increase or decrease stock, you would do a goods in or a goods out for that. This particular transaction also is used, you'll see this being posted as a result of, for example, landed costs, where there's a difference in cost amount just to increase and decrease the value on the stock on the accounting module. You'll also see goods in and goods out being used on the basis of stock take, for example. So where stock differences are being posted, depending on if it's an increase or a decrease, it will post a goods in or a goods out transaction. So often you will see this being posted automatically as a result of something else that's happening within the platform. But these are transactions that you can obviously manually input yourselves, but also do through the file importer. So in the file importer, you can also do a mass import of goods in or goods receipts. We also have the goods out, which is to decrease your physical stock totals. I'll explain obviously in relation to both of those, and we'll do it obviously in the live demonstration, the effect on the accounting side, because one requires you to input a cost, the other one will take the average cost as it is today within the platform. So I'll show you the difference between the two of those as we input them into the system. Then we have a stock transfer, which is simply moving stock from one location to another. So, for example, we have a general warehouse and we have another warehouse, maybe it's our receiving warehouse, and we literally want to move stock from the first warehouse to the second warehouse. Or perhaps it's a retail location. Maybe you've got a warehouse and you've got a retail shop and you want to show that the stock has been moved from one location to another. And you can do that simply using a stock transfer. As I mentioned at the very beginning, you've two ways of doing a stock transfer. We've got a stock transfer transaction, but we also have a very simple transfer directly within the item master record itself. And again, I'll show you that during the live demonstration, how easy it is to do either or to move the stock. We're not moving value, we're just literally moving quantity to say that it's no longer in the general warehouse, that it now resides in the van or in the retail shop or in a receiving warehouse or wherever that location may be. Then we have our stock take. So ultimately, because of course we're a perpetual inventory system, stock is moving in and out of the system at all times. And you can see they're just even utilizing the goods in and the goods out. We're counting stock. So we're all the time saying the stock is this, we're increasing to bring it in, the goods in, and then goods out then to issue it out. So I guess what it alleviates the point is that you don't have to constantly do a stock take on a daily basis. So stock take becomes more periodic. So perhaps it's something that you only require at the end of a quarter, the end of every half year or at the end of every year. And that's just to do a stock check on everything that's in your different locations. Check what's on the shelf. So we allow you to do that very simply, and it's by location that we do that, of course, utilizing the stock take function. So it's one warehouse at a time. Okay. Now, what you can do, and you'll see that during the live demonstration, you could reduce that down and make that relevant then to a specific stock group, for example, if you had a specific area within the warehouse that you were counting and you get all the items one particular group, let's say, for example, in one aisle, that you can do it from that particular area. Might as well mention it here as well that we do cover, or we do include the ability for multi-user stock take. So that is more than one person being able to add in the counted stock entry. And then, of course, for an administrator just to go in and then post all the stock differences. So maybe you have 1,000 items and maybe there's a lot more and you've split the list between different people to go off and count and check. And then they've come back and input those quantities. So we allow for that within the stock take functionality since last year. I don't know if you're aware of that since, I think it's January of 2025 in that release. And then last but not least, we have a restock of items. This is something we would have touched on as well in the purchasing module. So we would have confirmed how to replenish stock totals, and that's simply using the restock on the items. Now this is actually done through the purchasing module, but just wanted to show you this here to remind you of how stock items can simply be replenished. So whether that's raw materials or whether that's bill of materials, you can use the item reordering functionality to replenish your stock items. So ultimately what happens is that will post purchase orders to your suppliers, and of course ultimately then in batch format you get to maintain your stock levels. So whether that's to reorder quantity, reorder level, minimum stock, you get to decide the reorder levels that are required for your replenishment. So I just want to mention that again because of course we did touch on that during the purchasing module, and of course in production in the next module, we will touch on it again in relation to the MRP. Okay, so just to bring that in to line as part of your stock transactions overview. So let's just quickly review again the goods in. So I think I've probably mentioned everything there just even on the previous slide. So not to go through it all completely in great detail. So I've mentioned there, this is used outside of the purchasing process. So used outside of a purchase order, outside of a goods receipt. So this is where you're just replenishing stock, so increasing stock totals. When would you use it? And I think I've mentioned that already, when you're entering opening balances for your stock, for example. So again, you could use the file importer to bring in a batch of all those, those opening balances for your different stock items. When you need to make adjustments to those items. It's available through the file importer, as I've mentioned. On one screen alone, on one goods in screen, you don't have to do it item by item and one goods in for each item. You can literally have multiple stock items listed on one entry for the goods in. This is applicable to all stock items, raw materials, batch and serial numbers, serial numbered items. So just all your different stock items. And of course, there are automatic postings to the GL, which I will go through in detail, the effect of which I'll show you as well on the live demonstration. So of course, goods out is primarily just the opposite of that. And again, it's decreasing your stock outside of purchasing. So you want to come in, you want to decrease your stock, perhaps you've received something in incorrectly, and rather than doing a return through purchasing, perhaps you're only starting out to maintain your stock levels, you can use the goods out to make those adjustments, or you might be advised to do that as part of a solution, perhaps to a scenario that has arisen during a support call or whatever. So the goods out. So again, when making adjustments, this option is on our file importer, so we can do this in batch. Same as before with the goods in, multiple items, and for all the different types of stock items. And of course, as always, automatic postings to the GL. The difference with the goods out is that it'll take the moving average cost as it stands today, whereas the goods in, it will expect you to input a cost price at that point in time. Now I will show you during the live demonstration what will happen if you don't input a cost price. You will get a user message to say this is going to be posted at zero cost, and that will affect your moving average cost price going forward if you receive in or do a goods in without an actual cost price on that. So just to make you fully aware of that. Stock transfer, very simply here, just on a simple diagram. What is it? We literally move, so you might have item 1 and item 2, take them from warehouse 1, move them into warehouse 2. That's it. That's all we're doing. We're just moving it from one location to another. Nice and simple. So it can be done in two places, as I've already mentioned, the item master screen or directly through the stock transfer option. And of course, if you've got batch or serial items, you can select the batch or serial numbers to move as part of that transfer as well. So that's important to note. Just a quick demonstration. This is actually on the item master itself. This is your warehouses tab. So when you go into your item details, click on the warehouses tab, you will see these different columns, the quantity to transfer, select the warehouse to transfer to, so quantity of 6. So you're at this point in time, you're on the line that has the current warehouse where you're moving the stock from. And then over on the right, you'll see the double arrow for left and right. And you simply just click on that and that just performs the transfer for you. Nice and simple. Alternatively, you can do that here within the stock transfer screen. So just to show you, it's nice and simple from warehouse to warehouse. And you can see there you have the option, as always, to edit batch numbers for selection or serial numbers for selection, and of course to add a line. So if you wanted to add multiple lines that are moving from a particular location, perhaps you want to stock up the van before the guy goes out on the road, before your employee goes out on the road to sell stock directly from the back of the van, or has items there to replenish. Perhaps he's going out to do a review on items that are up for warranty, and you might have to replace items while he's there on site. And of course, this all comes in then and comes in line with the Sell app when somebody's out on site, or even the Services app if they have to replenish items or to order an item and then just to confirm that that's been delivered to the customer directly from the van location as well. So lots of different ways to look at this. So for our stock take, so very simply, our stock take allows you to record your counted stock. This can be done obviously at any time. I did mention that it should be periodic, and that's the whole idea with Enterpryze, is that you don't have to do a stock take every day because of the perpetual inventory, and stock is being increased and decreased on a daily basis on the basis of your sales transactions, your purchasing transactions, and as you've seen already on the stock transactions. So a stock count then is something that you can do at any time, at any point in time. So it's done per warehouse. As I've mentioned, it's one location at a time. It's 3 very, very simple steps combined to activate and to update the stock take. It's for all stock items, so whether they're raw materials, and of course that includes batch and serial items as well. It will increase or decrease the stock totals depending on the stock differences that are generated. So remember I mentioned about the goods in and the goods out, so the goods receipt and the goods issue, they will be automatically created depending on the difference in the stock totals, whatever the current in-stock total is based on the counted stock. So if that difference creates an increase, of course, you're going to get a goods receipt, or a decrease, you're going to get a goods issue. So that's doing all of that automatically for you. And of course, as always, automatic postings to the GL on completion. So the accounting module is updated by that goods issue and by that goods receipt. And of course, you have a counted stock report available to populate. So on the grid itself, when you go into the counted stock, you can generate an Excel file that you can give off to the various end users to go off into the warehouse or into the shop, or to check the back of the van, for example, to see what stock needs to be counted and to make sure they have the right list with them as well. And I've mentioned, of course, we allow for multi-user counted stock entry. And I'll show you that on the live system. There's an option that you can switch on to be notified. So if you've given several people access, and they're inputting stock count, you will get a notification. So perhaps you're the stock manager. So you'll be given notification when a counted stock entry has been complete. It's not that they will post the differences, because that's of course down to somebody else to post the difference, but just that a counted stock entry has been performed. Okay, so this is also available on the WMS. So this ties in nicely as well on the stock take. We have a stock take option on our warehouse management system. So on the handheld, somebody could go around the warehouse and do a counted stock entry. It doesn't post the differences, but it will simply record what they've counted on the shelf. That will automatically update onto the web as they're counting it, which is fantastic. And this comes again in relation to notifying the users of the counted stock entry. So that previous step. So you'll get a notification then in the notification center to say that that stock has been counted. And at least then you know where that has come from. So any of those counted stock entries done directly on the WMS will automatically flow through to the web stock take screen. And that's where you will finalize the stock count on the web side itself. Okay, so just a quick demonstration just to show you that on the stock take screen, the first step is simply selecting the location. As I said, it's one location at a time. The second step is populating the count. So that's here. Now I'll show you during the live demonstration how you can make that work even better for yourself. And of course then the third step is where you've confirmed that count and posted it down to the counted items at the bottom of the screen. And of course, that's where you then post the differences at that point in time. So it's a simple, very simple process. Just a quick reminder of the restock, because this is one of our stock transactions that we overviewed as well. So this is for bulk replenishment of items through the creation of purchase orders. So this is done through the purchasing menu, and this is called item reordering. So this is where you can bulk create purchase orders to replenish stock. So primarily, obviously, around your raw materials, if you want to ensure that you've got enough of those are sufficient in stock quantities, or you need to replenish those if they're running low, that you can create multiple purchase orders against your suppliers at one time using the item reordering. So if you're familiar with this, this is where we provide a suggested reorder quantity based on minimum maximum levels, in-stock quantity, committed, or on-order quantity for each item. So it really just reduces the time ultimately to reorder stock. So saving you having to go in and one by one to add in a purchase order against each of your suppliers, you can do this all in bulk using the item reordering. And of course, this is permission-based, so not everybody sees the option to item reorder. This is assigned to the users through the purchasing module in the user settings, okay, to gain access to that. There's multiple filters. You can process regular stock items, raw materials, and of course, bill of materials as well for manufacturing. But better than that, of course, we have the MRP for the bill of materials. So that's something we will look at in the next lesson as well. Okay, so just a quick reminder, demonstration of the item reordering. So you can see there, you can, at the very, very top, you can select the type from stock item or bill of materials. So as long as the item is selected as a stock item, it's going to be included in the filter that's generated. And then you've got other filters available, such as the group, the product group. Where is the quantity by warehouse? Is it by specific warehouse, the default supplier, the different stock levels that you can select upon as well? And then, of course, enter the reorder quantity and select those items that you want to bulk reorder from your suppliers. And as you can see there, you can create your orders. So if you've selected 10, 20 items and maybe all relating to 2 or 3 different suppliers, that of course is going to generate 2 or 3 different purchase orders based on the items selected. So just a quick overview of the impact of all of these transactions on the accounting module. So what actually happens at the point of entry? So the goods in, which I mentioned already, increases the stock, so increases your in-stock quantity. It also updates your cost price. So that's your moving average cost price. So you are expected to input a cost price at the point in time of inputting a goods in. Otherwise, you've no value on that stock as it comes in. If you receive it in at zero, you will get a warning on screen, and I will show you that during the live demonstration, because that will impact your moving average cost price. So what does it do on the accounting side? Well, it posts to the stock offset, which is the stock adjustments cost of sales, basically, on your cost of sales, and the stock valuation, which is on your balance sheet, using the price on the transactions. That's the value or the cost price that you input directly on the goods in at that point in time. The goods out reverses the above, that is, reverses the stock quantity. However, it uses the cost price. So that would be the moving average cost price as it stands right now today. So if you've done 5 different goods in at different prices, you're going to have generated a different moving average cost price. And it's that moving average cost price that will then be used for the value on the goods out, or the journal on the goods out. And again, I'll show you that on the live demonstration. The stock transfer. So it only changes the warehouse totals. So it posts in and out of the stock valuation or the balance sheet account. There's no change in value. It's in and out just to show that the stock is literally just moving from one location to another. So it only changes the warehouse totals. Stock take. So I did mention that if you increase or decrease, depending on your stock differences, there will be a resulting goods in or goods out transaction. And of course, again, what are the effects on your accounting modules? So again, we've got our stock offset, which is our stock adjustments GL account. And don't forget, this is all at item group level. So all of the GL accounts that have been defined in the system are all at your item group level. That's how the definitions have been done to date. And of course, then the other side of that then is the stock valuation or your stock account on your balance sheet to move that amount or to move that value based on, again, the current cost price or the current moving average price. And that's what it's taking on the stock take. So just a quick overview of what picking stock is. This is something we will introduce even more so now in relation to the production module when it comes into play in the next lesson, where you can assign orders. So this is where you can assign a sales order or a production order to a pick list to pick it and deliver it to your customer. So just another aspect within your items menu where you can allow users or assign orders to be picked within a particular warehouse. This works really nicely in tandem with, of course, our warehouse management system, but you could even utilize it now based on what's available within the grid and generate a filtered report and export that to hand that off to somebody, maybe to go off in the shop, for example, if you're dealing with brick and mortar store, or perhaps into the warehouse to pick the stock directly from a specific bin location, because of course this will show us where the stock resides, for example, within a location, if you have allocated stock to a particular bin. So it just means you get to overview and see exactly where that stock is being picked from and getting ready then for delivery to your customers. So picking the stock, you can see here we can do a couple of things here in relation to the stock itself. So this, in fact, is a status that's available currently on your sales order screen. You can specify the pick status and who the picker is. We can also do this directly from the picking the picking tab within the items menu, and we can select exactly the same. We can allocate a sales order to a pick status and to a picker directly from the tab itself. And of course, from here, if the user has permission, they can assign. Again, it's all based around permissions for the particular user, whether or not they have the ability to pick stock. So here we have the picking module. So if we're in the items menu and then we click on picking, you can see here that we can select the different sales orders. We can, if they've already been pre-assigned to pick, we can now assign them to a picker directly from the picking tab itself. And of course, you can export the list to Excel to get it printed, or perhaps you might already have a report that's been done for you in the PDF option, or you can certainly, save the filters as well on the grid and export those then to be printed and collected on that particular location, for example. So there is a new setting for this and you will see it here. So when you're looking in settings, user settings, we have an option here under items, which is assign pick. So just to make you aware of that, if you're wondering why you can't see the tab under items, it's down to user permissions in your organization. So without further ado, let me just quickly pop in to the live system and let's take a look at those simple transactions. So with the goods in, goods out, stock transfer and stock take. So let me just share my screen with you. And I'll just make sure I have the right one there. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to focus in on an item and I'm going to bring you back to, if you were with me on the previous lesson, we looked at one particular item master, which was around a finished product for a red bike, if I'm correct, last week, or 2 weeks ago even. So I'm now just going to look at one of the stock items or raw materials for that particular bike or one of the components that makes up that bike, just to see, to show you what the current in-stock totals look like before we make any adjustments through the stock transactions. So you can see here, I've just here on the items menu and into stock items, into our stock items grid. And you can see here, I'm just looking at the wheel, the second item here. And if I scroll across, I can see here very clearly, it's a stock item. I've currently got 4 on hand. So I can see exactly if I click on that 4 on hand, don't forget wherever you see that purple clickable, you drill in, it'll give you all of the information in relation to that particular item. And in this instance, for the on hand, it will be all of the stock movements for that particular item to date, which is quite a lot. And of course, if we had any committed, i.e. on order, from our customers, we would also see the relevant totals here. And of course, stock availability, and I can see where it's available in all warehouses, or if this resides in other organizations, I can also click through to see, well, is it present in that organization? If I have already, and you can see it actually in this one here, it's already been replicated in this particular organization. So just reminding you, again, this is just touching base on what we saw in the previous lesson, of how to review your stock items directly from the grid. Okay, so one of the first pieces of important information here is the average cost. So this is the moving average cost. So as I can see here, this is currently 10 for this particular item. So that's important to note. I want you to see what that figure is. We will come back to this figure again in a moment. So that 10 is based on all the receipts today, all the in and out of the stock item to date that affects the moving average cost price. So if I start off here with a goods adjust in, so let's increase the stock totals for this particular item, create a new goods receipt. And again, if I just maximize the screen there for you. So just a couple of things at the very top of the screen here. It always defaults to today's date. I can, of course, change the date on the transaction. If I've got a journal remark that I want to make sure comes through to the journal entry on the accounting module, I can input that now. And of course, if there's an owner on the document, perhaps I want to make sure I'm the person that's, just for a record purposes of who actually added the goods receipt. You can insist that your end users always populate the owner field, for example. You might have custom fields where you can update the custom field entries here as well, or ultimately add a line or scan a barcode if you want to scan those in on screen. So if I go to add a line, and of course, I know what that item is, I could, of course, reduce this down by item group because I do know, for example, that this particular item belongs to bike parts. So for example, all the parts that relate to the bike, and there it is there, the wheel item, I can see the current stock level of 4. I'm just going to bring in a quantity of 2. And another thing that I'm going to do now is, because first thing I can see here is that the unit price is 0. I've got my edit button here in case you're wondering, because I know this is probably a question since the last update as well. How did you get your edit button to be there at the front of the screen? Very simply, you can grab your edit button from wherever it is on the screen and just place it to where you require it. So just a nice little tip of when you're working within your transactions. And this, in fact, has saved for every time I've come back in. This is saved against my cache. So just click and drag it to where you need it to be on screen so that it's available for you. So what I'm going to do is before I put a price in, I'm just going to click on save. I wanted to show you this. This is what happens. Some of the items in your goods receipt are being booked in at 0 value. So this is letting you know that this will impact your stock valuation, gross profit, and future transactions. We recommend ensuring the stock item has a value. So even at this point in time, you are being notified that we recommend you have a cost price. This is important. Now, unless you want to bring it in at 0, but the impact will be that it will, inadvertently change the moving average cost price. But what I'm going to do is, if you remember, the cost price was 10. I'm just going to slightly change that, and I'm just going to, maybe it's going to cost us a little bit more to bring in this particular quantity of 2 this time. So I'm going to increase the cost to 12. Okay, and then I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to bring you back to the item master. So we can see there a quantity of 2 at 24. And if I go into the journal entry, so I wanted to show you this on the accounting side. So it's using the cost that we input on the transaction, which was 2 by 12, so it's 24. And I can see exactly what's happening. It's crediting my cost of sales and debiting my balance sheet for the stock account. Now, it just happens to be called raw materials on both, but in fact, both reside. One is on the P&L and one is on the balance sheet. Now let's go back to the item master. I want to show you what has happened and the impact of that now on our moving average. So you can see there, we now have changed our moving average cost to 10.67. And of course, that's based on the fact that we now have a quantity of 6. It was previously 4 at 10, and now it's 6 at 10.67. So the difference between the two. So it's going to give you a moving average cost price. So that's important. So remember that 1067, because now if we do a goods adjust, so that's to issue out the stock. Let's do the same stock item again. And again, if we just come down to the bike parts, again, I'm just making it simple so you can see the items on screen. I'll just take out one of them. Okay, perhaps we brought in one too many this time. And I'm going to leave, as you can see there, I don't get to amend, even if I go to line entry, I don't get to amend the cost or the value. Okay, I'm simply going to update the owner. Again, I just want to record that against the entry. I'm going to click on save because this is automatic. It takes the moving average. Now, if I go to the journal and just look at that, 1067, as I expected. So it's based on the current moving average cost price as it stands right now at that moment in time. That's what impacts the goods issue. Okay, so it's important that you understand the impact of both of those. Then we have a look at the stock transfer. So as we can see there, the stock on hand is 5. If I drill into that particular item, let's have a look at where all of that stock resides. I think it's pretty obvious. It's all in one particular warehouse currently at the moment. So if I wanted to do a simple stock transfer, so here I am in the item master, clicking on the warehouse tab. I can see there the 5 is all in the general warehouse. So if I want to transfer, for example, a quantity of 2 and then select the warehouse, so for example, I might put it into the receiving warehouse, just as an example, click on the stock transfer button and you will see there instantly my in-stock in that warehouse has reduced to 3 and my receiving warehouse has increased to 2. My stock on hand is still 5. Okay, nice and simple. And the same with the stock transfer here. So if I decide to use this stock transfer screen, which is my stock transfer transaction. This, of course, allows me to do this in bulk. So if I had a number of items that I wanted to move at one time, this would just make it nice and simple. So, for example, let's go the opposite way. Let's go from the receiving warehouse back to the general warehouse. And again, if I go to add a line and the item code, I know it's wheels, so I'll just start off there. And it's going from the receiving warehouse. And of course, if I had bins, if you needed to, it would obviously, if I had allocated those to a bin, we could see those at this point as well. So let's maybe take one of those out, bring one of them back. As you can see there, it's telling me that in the receiving warehouse, there's a current stock of 2, and the general warehouse has a current stock of 3. After the transfer, what the values will be in both. Click on save. And if I now click on save again and save that transaction, and again, if I go into the journal entry, just to show you that it's literally just a nil effect. I've mentioned that already on the stock transaction overview for the GL account postings, what actually happens. So again, it's the moving average in and out of the stock control. So there's a nil effect in terms of the value. So it's just, you can see 1067 in, 1067 out, but it's a nil effect. It's a zero effect on the balance sheet account. But the primary effect, of course, are the warehouse totals. Okay, so that's the simple stock transfer. So let's go back again to the items. And now let's take a look at our stock take. So I wanted to show you something here first and foremost on our notifications. Sorry, if I go in here to notifications. So if I go in here to the notification center, and if we go in here to settings, and if we go in here to items, under items, you can see here we've got pending stock count. So if it's a case that multiple users are inputting a stock count for the stock take purposes, you can be notified when there's a pending stock count to be done. So that's where this box is ticked. So this would really be primarily for those that would be finalizing the stock take. This would be important to note from each of those users when the counted stock entry has been done. So for example, if I come in here to items and go back in here now to stock take, and if we select our location, so the general warehouse, so what can we do next to make this easier to count? So for example, there's a couple of things here. You can select this item, select this box here, which is auto post after count input, which takes it from this section here on the items to count down to the counted items. So I could leave that ticked and I'll show you how that works now. There is also an option here to export all data to Excel. So all the data that you see here, and of course, more importantly, if you look across, we get the important information. We get the item code, the name, the group, the bin, so the location of the item, perhaps on the shelf in the warehouse or within the shop. What you could do, of course, to make this list work better, because of course I'm looking here at potentially 44 pages of items. If you wanted to divvy this out for the different item groups. So for example, I'm just going to make that work for the bike parts, so just so I can see that particular item on the wheel. And what I'm going to do here is just do a counted entry. So for example, first thing to note here is, again, is the moving average cost price. So that 1067 has come through here again. Now, if we look at the on hand, now that's showing us a 4. Let me just go back to that item again. So for the general warehouse on hand, let me just double check. I think we are correct in the 4. We only moved one of those back. We were 3 and then replenished that back to 4. Let me just double check on my figures. Yeah, I didn't even have to go back in that far to do that. I could do it from the stock items grid itself. I'm just double checking all the information is correct at this point in time. So let me just do that and let me just change that to the bike group. Okay, so I'm going to say counted stock entry. In fact, for that particular warehouse is 5. And can you see there, when I hit the tab button, it automatically disappeared. It didn't disappear anywhere. It has now brought it down here to the counted items. So that's where I have this button here, auto post after count input. So that just saves you having to then post all counted. So you might be just doing all the counted entries and tabbing through them, but it can automatically bring them down here to the bottom of the screen for you. Now, what I can also do in terms of notifications, let me just see if we just come out of that screen for now and go to stock take, and let me just check the notifications because we should be following that through to show the counted stock entry. Okay, might have to log out and log back in again. But the idea there is that once somebody is doing those counted stock entries, that you can then get notified when a stock take is ready to be complete. So it just means that I didn't post anything, I didn't save anything. However, once it resides in the counted items at the bottom of the screen, can you see that it keeps those entries till you're ready to post those through? So what I might do is I might just take off this particular batch item just to keep this nice and simple. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Post Differences. So what will happen here is a goods receipt. Can you see that? A goods receipt created. You can see that at the top of the screen. So that's based on the stock differences, whether you need to increase stock or decrease stock. So now if we look at the item master for the wheel, we should see that the quantity is now 6. If I looked at that, for example, for a specific warehouse, I would see that that's relevant to, so if I go into my prices and quantities, or if I brought in the warehouse tab just to show you that as well. So in the general warehouse, so for example, if we just, again, do the wheel, there we have it. And we can see there on hand in the general warehouse is 5. Perfect. Now let's go into the accounting module just to see that final posting that was created. So if we just clear all of those out, so we get the latest entry, and make sure I have no other filters there. Let me just make sure I have all the filters there. Looking at journal entries. Just make sure that has everything to date. Okay, I have no filters running there. Let me just clear filters. Okay, and then we should look for just go in here to go into items, and I know it was a goods adjust in. Just go into that one there, 1067. Quantity of 16235. Okay, the goods receipt. So as a result of the stock take, we can see that quantity of 1 that's been received in based on the latest cost for that particular item. I'll have to double check all of those now again because I can see there it wasn't showing up initially on that journal entry. But that's the idea, that if you do a stock take and it performs a good adjust in or a goods adjust out, that it will automatically do the GL account posting for you as well. So just let me go back to my screen here, and let me just share the rest of the remainder of the presentation, just so that we can keep up to date with where we are. So that's just a good look at each of those stock transactions. So just stock reporting, there's lots of reports obviously within the system, such as the stock report, that it gives you an overview of the stock items, the types, the quantity, price lists and special prices. We saw that on the stock report tab. So that's the one I've been using all the way through the live demonstration. The stock posting report, that one can be activated from the in-stock quantity, but also there's a stock posting report to see the detail of all postings for that item. That's the history of everything that's been posted for that particular item. All the goods are just in, goods are just out, any purchase invoices, goods receipt POs, sales deliveries, sales invoices that directly impact the stock total. Stock valuation. You can run a valuation of the stock at a particular price list or at cost price. Batch and serial item reports to track and trace the items as they come into stock, when they were assigned, expiry dates, traceability and audit around when they've been sold. So all of that information. There's also a series of reports that are available within the PDF menu. So for example, they give lots of different information around stock movements, so whether that's stock valuation, stock quantity movements, stock postings, so much more. Maybe take a look at what's available within that menu as well. So remember, this is your stock report. So this is the one that we saw when we go into our stock menu. So you get access to, of course, the special prices. This is where you've saved the price against your sales or purchase transactions as you're inputting them into the system against that customer or against a supplier, well, particularly against your customers. Then you've got the prices and quantity. So this is your special prices. As I mentioned, you can filter by item group. You can show all prices as well as special prices. You can edit those special prices, so whether that's by amount or discount, and of course you can export the results to Excel. We've actually got something new coming during the year around the special prices. We've improved the special prices tab even further for you, so watch out for that over the coming months. So just a reminder of what the special prices are. So that's where you've gone into, for example, the likes of a sales quote or a sales order. And there's an option in the actions menu where you can save the prices. And of course, if you're doing it for the very first time, the recommendation would always be input all the items onto an order for that particular customer or onto a quote, for example, onto that particular customer, save the prices and then delete the quote. So it's a great way of just bulk recording your special prices to begin with, or import them through the file importer, whichever one is the easiest for you. Okay, so that's our special prices, and then prices and quantity. So this is just a detailed view of your stock items on screen, where you can drill in to see the in-stock quantities, all the transactions relating to those in-stock quantities, the committed stock, on order, the free stock, by warehouse, by price list, the average cost, all of the above, lots of different things. And price lists as well, you can get access to a WISE panel that we introduced last year as well to see the price per price list for that particular item. So you can see that without actually having to drill in to the item details itself. You can also see whether an item has been replicated in another organization and what organizations they are. And that's all through this stock report under the prices and quantity tab. So lots and lots of information. More importantly, if you're selling through omni-channel, so different channels such as Shopify and Square, you can upload your stock items to those channels directly from the prices and quantities tab. And you can see the ones that have already been uploaded to date. So it gives you full visibility. And of course, as always, you can add a new stock item directly from there, or of course, ultimately export the details to Excel. So lots and lots of different tabs that you could be reporting on directly from the stock report tab itself in the prices and quantities tab. Lots of different fields that you can bring to view, even the custom fields as well. Don't forget about your elliptical menu over on the top right there of the grid, where you can specify which columns to bring to view at all times. Wherever you see the purple clickables, of course, click in to see more information relevant to that particular column. So then we have the stock posting report itself, which is the on-screen report, all the different postings that have taken place for that particular item. You can run it by item or by item group. You can report on for a specific date, warehouse selection, and then the details are displayed on screen. And of course, with all of these reports, as always, you can export them to Excel. You can see there just a very simple filter available on that report, and you can see it there where it's grouped by the different items, or if you had specified by item group, you can see the different transactions that take place against the items, the quantity and the balance. Stock valuation. So get a value of your stock at a chosen price list. So this can be based on price lists that you've defined, or of course it can be run by or associated with a cost price. So for example, you select the items, the groups, the warehouse, the date selection to report on, and of course it'll report on the prices on the chosen price list, showing the quantity in stock for that period to give you the value. So you can export the data to Excel as always. The stock valuation report. So this is another handy one. As you can see here, just on the results, you get the price, the quantity, and the stock value based on what you valued it at, and up to and including that particular date that you chose at that particular time. The stock valuation PDF report, this is a good one to use to get the value of stock at cost price to match against the balance sheet stock account. So this is the PDF report option in the stock reports option. So the PDF report can be used against the current cost price. So the value that you generate, the date that you use, can also be used against the balance sheet report in the accounting module. You can see here where the values agree. So that can be used based on the moving average cost price, but that's the one in the PDF report option. You've obviously got a multitude of batch and serial reports, availability, expiry. We've also got the traceability, and of course we've got the sales report. So a full audit flow of when those items are received into stock, the batch numbers are allocated. So what receipt it came in on, was that a goods receipt PO, or was that a goods adjust in? If it was issued out of stock, was that a delivery, sales delivery, or was that a goods adjust out? So all of the different information. The expiry, what are the expiry information that you've retained against that particular batch or serial number? So the traceability from the time it was received in to the time it was shipped out to your customers. The sales journey on the sales report, so when the batch item or serial item was sold on to your customer. So they can all be found here. They've all got a different set of filters as well available to them. So this is the one here on the availability report. Select the item code and the warehouse. And of course, then we've got the expiry report. It's got expiry date, item code and warehouse on the filter. So I'll let you explore these in your own time. And of course, we've got the traceability. You can see there we've got item code, batch or serial number, and the supplier. So for the traceability. And of course, if we look here then at the sales report, so we've got item code and the batch serial number. So the sales journey. Okay, so sales order to order date, sales delivery to invoice. So the actual sales journey for that particular batch. So many more reports available through the PDF stock reports menu that I've mentioned already, and in particular I mentioned the stock valuation report to match up to your balance sheet account here as well. So lots of different reports. So this just gives you an idea of what you can run on the existing PDF reports. If you don't see all of those, it may be to do with the fact that you don't have permission in your organization, or if you're a SAP Business One organization, you won't see any of these reports at all because you have accessibility to full stock reports within your SAP Business One system. You might see additional reports again if they've been customized for you throughout this particular reporting menu as well. And then just a quick touch on that I've mentioned already throughout the presentation around omni-channel selling. So different areas within the platform where stock is important and stock is managed for the purpose of being able to sell to different areas. So I've mentioned around the van delivery. So I've mentioned around the Sell app, being able to stockpile the van and being able to sell from the back of the van. Production, project management, service billing, order planning, all the different areas that encompass your stock management. We've also got all the different mobile apps. For the different channels where you can sell from, such as Shopify and e-commerce, so Square, Shopify, you might have an online POS store or our Enterprise POS, um, Square and trade counters. So just to name but a few, just to give you an overview of how omni-channel selling can look or will look like within the system. And of course, this all comes down to where we talked about the channels and the locations. So you can have warehouses by channel, for example. So we might have the general warehouse, we might have a van for the mobile app. We also might have one for Square, for Shopify as a location. So to know what stock resides in those different locations as you sell from them and obviously receive stock into those different channels. So lots of different ways of how you can manage it. And then when you manage those by channel, you can define a price list by channel as well. So you might have your selling price list, but you might have a price list for Shopify, one for Square, or one for the shop, one for the back of the van. You might have different price lists as well defined by channel. And of course, overall, then you can define minimum and maximum stock levels to ensure optimum replenishment of stock throughout the whole platform. So that's not just in relation to one specific channel, but you want to make sure that you've got enough stock spread out across the whole system. So going mobile obviously just feeds on into one of the channels that you can sell through, of course, which is just our Sell app, just to give you an example here. So again, this is where you can track the stock, for example, from the van. So maybe the van is one of your channels, so one of your locations, where you can create orders, create quotes, activities, see stock levels across all warehouses. So if you want to know exactly where the stock resides, this can also work online and offline. You can add new customers and contacts, and of course you can limit accounts by salespeople as well, that they only see their customers when they log in to the mobile app itself. So lots of possibilities around multi-user settings and around multi-channel or omni-channel selling. And of course, just some initial settings here, which obviously impact on the mobile app side of things, which is to do with your module settings. We have default price list for estimation, and user settings as well, access to the different mobile apps that you give user permission to as well. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, guys. Just a quick recap on where we are. Obviously, all the different types of transactions that we reviewed today and where they impacted the full solution across the board. And of course, the live demonstration on how those transactions work, all this different stock reports. So do take some time out maybe to review all of those yourself in your own time. And obviously the omni-channel selling. So just an overview of where stock impacts and could impact your system if you were selling from multiple channels and different platforms associated with Enterprise. And of course, going mobile. So the next module is going to be everything around production. So we'll have a full production overview, all the different settings, how to process a production order, the MRP, which I mentioned already today with regards to replenishing stock, but this will be replenishment of stock for bulk reordering of raw materials to make sure you've got enough stock there to make the final products. How planning we can look at planning as well around the resource planner, picking production orders. I mentioned that around picking today as well. Production day, how do you make the products and get that ready to deliver then to your customers? So lots around production in the next module in 2 weeks' time. So I look forward to seeing you on the next session, and would like to say thank you so much for staying on and for taking the time out to be part of this lesson on the university. I'd look forward to seeing you on the next session. Take care.